Good morning, everyone, or to my fellow student, Sir Blasa, and to all the viewers of this video. Good morning. We are here to present the topic residual concentration deposits, and it is part of our uh, curriculum, which is in mineral exploration and geostatistics. I am here with Mr. Carlo Gabriel Manalo to present this topic. For our topic outline, first, we have the introduction. Second, controls and residual concentration deposit, which is climate controls, role of chemical weathering, supergene enrichment, and groundwater influence. Third, stage of residual enrichment and residual or zones. Fourth, types of residual concentration deposits, such as laterite, manganese concentration, clay deposits, tin, placer deposits, earth element, and residual carbonate associated deposits. Fifth, worldwide and local distribution of these deposits. Six, mining techniques and exploration strategies. Seven, economic significance and environmental impact. Eight, case studies and last the references. Next slide. What are the residual concentration deposits? Residual concentration deposits are mineral deposits that resulted on the accumulation of economic minerals as undesirable constituent of rocks or minerals are removed during weathering. These residues continue to accumulate until purity and volume are of commercial importance. Factors affecting the formation of residual concentration deposits are climate, weathering, current rock lithology, and groundwater influence. Next slide po. How about the climatic controls residual concentrations? Residual concentration deposits are formed in tropical regions. These are regions that are characterized with high precipitation that allows intense weathering that removes soluble materials, which leaves behind valuable and soluble minerals as residues. For the criterions, first we have the temperature, precipitation, and location. All 12 months have average temperature of 18 degrees Celsius and no winter seasons and frost cannot occur. It has a small average annual temperature range and day-night temperature range often exceed the annual range. For the precipitation, annual precipitation. Annual rainfall exceeds annual precipitation. Seasons are distinguished by variation in rainfall and cloudiness rather than temperature. For the location, tropical climates are found in regions near the equator, extending north and south to about 15 degrees 25 degrees latitude. This is the global distribution of tropical climates. Said in the earlier slide, those tropical areas are located near the equator. So the dark blue indicates tropical rainforest, blue tropical monsoon, and light blue is the tropical savanna. Here is the climate map of the Philippines. It is based on the research or the project of Bosconcillo et al., which entitles Physical Downscale Project Changes in Seasonal Mean Temperature and Rainfall in Cagayan Valley, Philippines, a journal for Meteorological Society of Japan. So the red is the climate type 1, blue is climate type 2, yellow is climate type 3, and green is climate type 4. How about the chemical weathering role in RCD? So chemical weathering results from chemical reaction between minerals in rocks and external agents like air or water. Oxygen oxidized minerals to alteration products, whereas water can convert minerals to clay or dissolve minerals completely. Liquid water are crucial to chemical weathering. And how about its specific roles in chemical weathering? First, it has a dissolution and alteration properties. Water, acids, and other atmospheric agents dissolve and transform minerals within the rock. Formation of secondary minerals. Chemical reaction leads to formation of secondary minerals such as clay minerals that are more stable in surface environment. And last is the concentration of elements. As soluble elements are leached away, these soluble elements are being concentrated, forming deposits such as laterites, bauxites, and kaolin. Chemical weathering role in residual deposits. So, how silicates are converted into clay. First, silicates with a combination of water, it produces clay, and also it dissolves the silicates and the cations within it. For example, is the potassium and the sodium. Chemical weathering may involve the disintegration of rock into rock fragments due to conversion of silicates into clay, such as on what we've seen when we are brewing a coffee. The type of clay formed depends on the composition of the original silicate. For example, feldspars, when it combined with water, it forms a aluminum-rich clay or colonite, or it's either potassium or sodium-rich. And how about the iron or magnesium-rich silicates? Um, Basically, it results to magnesium-rich silicate clays. The conversion of silicate clays is enhanced when water is slightly acidic. So as we see it here in dissolving of minerals, slightly acidic rainwater can also react on non-silicate rocks and also halite dissolved directly into water such as what we call soil. Next is the oxidation. Oxidation involves the combination of certain metals, iron particularly, with oxygen in process of stealing electrons. Next slide po. How about the groundwater and formation of residual concentration deposit? First, there are modern theories of groundwater hydrology that have not as yet found widespread application in the field of mineral exploration. There is, however, great potential for their application at least two fronts. First is the genesis of economic mineral deposit, and the next is the geochemical exploration. The genesis of economic minerals is created by the authors, but and also the geochemical exploration is basically testing the geochemical properties of the lithology of the area. Next slide. In the genesis of economic mineral deposit, it is basically founded by White, Skinner, and Barton and Park. They provide an SUTEX, recent reference on economic mineral deposit in their genesis. The direct influence of shallow groundwater is responsible for the supergene enrichment in rich charge area and for the disposition of pollution and evaporites in discharge area. Slide po. How about the formation mainly of the RCD? Residual concentration deposits form when weathering process primarily chemical, remove soluble materials from rocks, leaving behind the residue of more resistant and valuable minerals in higher concentration. So there is a process which is the chemical weathering. We have also the leaching and the concentration of this residue or valuable minerals. The process of this formation require these different economic this criteria. First is the presence of rock or loads containing valuable minerals, of which the undesired substance are soluble and desired substance are generally soluble under surface condition. Second is its climatic condition must favorable in the chemical decay. Third is the relief must not be too great or valuable residue will be washed away by a rapid or flow water movement. And last is the long continued crystal stability and essential in order that residue may accumulate in quantity and deposit may not destroyed by erosion. Formation, also information of residue concentration deposit. There are two ways how it is being formed. First is the residue is simply an accumulation of a mineral that has not changed during a process. For example, iron oxides in iron banded formations. And second is the valuable mineral first come into existence as a result of weathering processes, as I said earlier, and then persists and accumulates. For example, as the feldspar of the cyanide decomposes upon weathering to form bauxite, which persists at the surface, while other constituents are removed in solution. And how about the supergene enrichment? Supergene enrichment has a great effect or great uh, effect to the uh, uh, RCD, residual concentration deposit. So what is it? It is a geological process where near surface oxidation and weathering or deposits lead to the leaching and subsequent precipitation of metals, resulting in higher concentration of valuable minerals. It can result from concentration minerals by chemical weathering, residual mineral composition, an existing mineral deposit can turn into a more highly concentrated mineral deposit by weathering process, and last is remarkable special case for weathering. So laterization is We will tackle it later, but its relationship to supergene enrichment is it is basically a specific type of supergene process. It concentrates certain elements in upper soil horizon through the removal of other immobile elements. Next. And how about the stages of residual enrichment and mineral zones? So first, we have the stage of oxidation or the zone of oxidation. The surface exposure of primary sulfide or leads to oxidation, weathering, chemical weathering. Oxygen and water react to sulfide minerals forming acidic solutions. For example, copper, iron, and silver. The next is the leaching stage or the leaching zone. Acidic water dissolve metals and transport them downward. For example, the ground minerals. But the quartz or we still those chemical are resistant to residues. Next is the supergene enrichment zones. Some metals such as iron precipitates as insoluble oxygen, forming gaussets or the cup rock for this deposit. Next is the unaltered primary sulfide zones or the hypogene ore or the deep seated ore. Below the enrichment zone, the original primary sulfide minerals remain largely unchanged or unaltered. Next, we have also the vein and breccia zone, which is formed by hydrothermal fluids carrying those valuable minerals can contain high concentration of precious and base metals. Next is the skarn and replacement zone. This formed by interaction of hydrothermal fluids in carbonate rocks. And last is the pegmatite and grayson zones, formed highly fractionate igneous melts enriched in rare elements. Next. Now, I'm going to give it to Carlo Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Shara. This is the types of resources in residual concentration deposits. As followed, we have laterites, comprising of nickel laterite, nickel cobalt, bauxite, and iron present in laterite. We also have manganese concentration, clay, kaolin deposits. We have enriched iron deposits on the form of BIF, tin concentration, and gold concentration deposits. We have placer deposits such as kyanite and other concentration deposits, as well as the REEs through the form of residual carbonatite associated deposits and ion adsorption type. Now, let's go to the laterite. It is derived from the Latin word later or brick. Now, as we observe, laterite is a layer rich in iron oxide. Hence, the coloration of the soil in the diagram, iron oxide is responsible on that. It is subjected to weathering, strong oxidation, and leaching conditions. Now, lateritic deposits, they are a type of weathering product. They can only form in tropical and subtropical regions. But you may ask, why are there some regions that are in temperate regions that exhibit lateritic properties? It's because many years ago, million years ago, that place could have been a subtropical or a tropical region. Now, laterites often exhibit a layered structure. We can see that on the diagram, we have a specific layering of the red laterite, mottled horizon, rocky subfluorite, and the bedrock. And such as a topsoil layer rich in organic material and lower layer dominated by iron and aluminum oxides. However, we need to consider that lateritic horizons or profiles are unique from each other, but they kind of follow a similar pattern. Laterites are commonly pozzolitic and nodular. Pozzolitic meaning like little nodules or little circles. They are porous in nature, and that's porous nature can be associated with intense chemical weathering and leaching. Now, there are different metals that can be sourced in laterites such as iron, nickel, cobalt, chromium, and aluminum. In the path for laterization, we start from bedrock. We can see in the diagram, in the left diagram, we have the iron duricrust to the bedrock. But in reality, the path of lateralization begins with the bedrock itself or the parent rock. Now, as with the rock is subjected to weathering forces, chemical weathering, leaching and heavy forces, it is transformed into the hard saprolite, followed by the soft saprolite and the limonite layer. Now we can see that the migration of magnesium oxide and to the enrichment of iron oxides. Now, laterite formation follows specific conditions. It needs high rainfall. Why? Because adequate rainfall is essential for the leaching and transportation of soluble elements. Without rainfall, there is no means to transport the soluble elements. There is no means to address, to begin the chemical weathering processes. We also have the parent rock. We know that lateritic soils are originated from usually mafic conditions because those mafic rocks are rich in iron and aluminum. Now, tropical climate is very much needed. As mentioned earlier, it's between 25 degrees north and 25 degrees south latitude. These tropical climates are hosting high precipitation as well as the amount of vegetation that increases microbial activity. This microbial activity induces acids that furthermore acidify the soil or regolith profile. And acidic condensation, as mentioned, the secreting organic matter produce acids that further acidify the soil or the regolith, furthermore releasing more minerals in via secondary enrichment. Now, in terms of lateritic soils, we need to differentiate between laterite and lateritic soils. It The main difference of these things are in the grain size itself. When we say laterite, it's more of gravelly. It has a gravel component. But if you just see a more finer component, that's probably on lateritic soils. And lateritic soils you can see probably on the O horizon to the uh, A horizon, where in topsoil begins, which is rich in organic matter, but sometimes it can be removed and leave a rather reddish soil or reddish yellow soil, depending on the geology of the area or the environmental factors. And the lateritic soils these are highly weathered residual soils in subtropical regions. As said, the color we have reddish brown, rusty red, to sometimes even purplish. But the purplish color can be associated with iron 3 oxidation. Next is what are the types of lateritic soils? We have wormhole laterite, which looks like a wormhole from its name, pellet-shaped laterite, which are being cemented by iron oxide, such as um, we have hematite, goethite, and we have dowelaterite. Dowelaterite is what I've encountered in Mindoro, which is produced by heating and drying. Next, if we want to classify a laterite soil, we would look at its color, which is typically red, reddish brown because of the iron oxides that are present. The consistency varies. Gradation, it's mostly well graded because there has been a mixture of the lateritic soils, the fine grained, and the laterite, which is the gravelly component. The pH levels of this, since this is highly leached and the alkali minerals are leached away, leaving acidic minerals. Hence, the pH level uh, tends to be more acidic, with pH levels usually 7, 6, above 7, so like 6.5, 6.5, and above. We have notable characteristics is the sesquioxide concretions, which comprise of aluminous silicate, iron aluminous silicate compounds, and the mineralogical abundance, we have aluminum compounds, silicon compounds, iron oxides, and the sesquioxides. Now, laterization, this is the process where laterite is formed. It's a weathering process. So how is laterization done? You have initial weathering. So let's focus on the diagram shown. You have your parent rock. Now, this parent rock is subjected to various weathering processes. Although chemical weathering is vital, to formation of laterite soils, let us not forget that mechanical weathering also plays a role on the laterization, but it's mostly chemical weathering. Now, leaching and deposition happens after the initial weathering. Now, we have this silica, lime, nitrogen, phosphate. So you're removing alkali minerals, making the soil more acidic, while the square oxides are being accumulated. These are your iron, aluminum, and then dehydration and crystallization. Why is this important? That's why I elucidated earlier the importance of a tropical climate, the hot and dry and wet climate, that constant uh, drying and wetting, because the accumulated materials undergo dehydration and crystallization. This basically solidifies the formation. And through this process, the constant on and off of the dehydration crystallization, we can see develop uh, and blended horizons within the soil profile. Furthermore, as mentioned, lateritic deposits through laterization form through physical weathering, chemical weathering, leaching, hydrolysis. Hydrolysis, when we talk about hydrolysis, it's when the water breaks down this rock component, which basically releases secondary minerals. For example, aluminum. Aluminum is very locked with oxygen in rock formations, but through secondary processes, through chemical weathering, via hydrolysis, aluminum is being released. Oxidation is also a part of the formation of lateritic deposits, when binding of iron with oxygen forms iron oxide, just as limonite, goethite, and etc. Formation of lateritic profile. So, as mentioned earlier, the more the constant wetting and drying sequences of uh, dehydration and crystallization, we develop a more defined lateritic profile. There are several factors affecting development of laterite profiles. The parent rock composition, like I said, the mafic rock composition has iron on it and aluminum. Vegetation and organic matter. So when we have vegetation organic matter, we have more organic acids that help acidify the soil and the regolith. The topography. Now, if you have a higher topography, higher elevation, water tends to act faster because the movement of water flows. So that certainly contributes to the development of lateritic profiles. And of course, time. The development of well-developed laterite profile needs to have a certain amount of time because it is being subjected to a multitude of forces. So it's normally a well-developed profile would have been developed over like millions of years. Now, layers of lateritic profile. Like I said, lateritic profiles differentiate based on your parent rock lithology, your climate, and the environment you're in. But commonly, we can see that these kinds of layers that are typically found on lateritic profiles. Now, the lateritic soil is what you can see on the top soil. These are highly weathered residual soils that are formed as a laterization of the rock. Now, what are ferricrits? Ferricrete is this ferruginous doric crust, which is iron laden, and these are cemented by iron oxides occurring as indurated continuous crust and soil horizon. So you can see ferricrete on the top. And ferruginous cap, which is a top horizon of nickel-rich laterite profile, because laterite profile differentiates on elemental abundance, it's dark reddish brown and iron-rich doric crust. So it somehow relates to lateritic soil and ferricrete. The mottled zone. So when we say mottled zone, you can see patches of iron oxides in the pallid zone matrix. We will discuss the pallid zone matrix later on. This forms above the water table. Now, if the mottled zone is not visible anymore and you're just seeing when you're digging through the lateritic soil profile as we did on our one of study I'm currently doing, we saw this exposure of clays, very clayey soil. Actually, it's not even very soil-like anymore. It's just really clay, which we can mold something. And that's where I realized, okay, this is the pallid zone or the plasmic zone, which are clay-rich or pale colored layer with laterite profile that are often found between the saprolite and the overlying mottled or ferruginous zone. Now, sometimes you will not see plasmic zone, but you will see the arenal zone, which are far more sandy in comparison. So when you say plasmic zone, it's more clayey. When arenal zone, it's much more sandy. And limonite layer, you see it on the upward, on more of in the upper zone rich in iron and low in magnesium. Why is it low in magnesium? Because magnesium has reached out at the bottom of the uh, of your horizon, and that's high iron content and low nickel. Nickel has also migrated on where? On the saprolite, which occurs below the water table in a zone of permanent saturation. So these are usually pale in color because most of your colorants came from iron oxides, hence, but this is very rich on nickel accumulation. And of course, you have your bedrock. And the bedrock is where we derive the lateritic soil, the laterites, and it's the underlying partially altered ultramafic rock. This sometimes comprise of your peridotites such as dunite, Hausbergite, and others. Now, we will observe here some common lateritic profiles. Like I said, we have variations. On the left, we have peridotite as the bedrock, and we can see that the doric crust and the red laterite, we can see its mobility. Now, on the red laterite, iron and aluminum is immobile, meaning it accumulates on the red laterite zone. Meanwhile, magnesium, silicon, and nickel moves towards the yellow laterite to the earthy saprolite. Now, yellow laterite will still be enriched in iron and aluminum, but there's observable leaching. Now, on the saprolite, that's where nickel accumulates. And that's why we can see on earthy and rocky saprolite, we have the main nickel mineralization. And furthermore, we can see there's laterite, the mineralized zones on this. Same with nickel and cobalt laterite profiles, we can see that there's horizons present, but they differ because these are distinct geologies and distinct regions we are talking about. Okay, so for more visual input, we can see secondary laterite and mottles that are recemented. Recemented with what? Probably recemented with iron oxides. We can see that we have the mottled horizon, laterite saprolite interface, earthosaprolite, and etc. And interestingly, the bedrock on this on the third diagram is nice, which suggests that the uh, the zone, the laterite here is probably of bauxite affinity. Next, what about the mineralogy of lateritic deposits? Besides the common iron, aluminum, the other stuff we can see, we can also say kaolinite, gypsite, quartz, bauxite, smectite, and illite. And why is iron and aluminum very significant on the mineral composition of laterite? Because it gives it coloration. The red is very distinctive of iron oxides. The economic significance, of course, with the economically retrievable metals, the metal extraction, and its role in soil development. And transformation of primary minerals into secondary minerals during weathering, we can see feldspar weathering, wherein feldspar is being transformed into clay minerals, bauxite formation. Through accumulation of aluminum-rich materials, we form bauxite. Iron oxide formation, we form ochre, which is limonite and other iron oxides. And of course, the silica leaching, wherein silica migrates down the soil and the lateritic profile. Now, when it comes to geochemistry, we can observe here that we have garnierite. Garnierite is a nickel ore. And at the A, we can observe the undulatory boundary between limonite and saprolite horizons. And following, we can see the distinct uh, layers and as well as the different ores that are being recovered on this lateritic deposit. Now, we can see abundance of aluminum, titanium, iron, nickel, and cobalt, phosphorus, and manganese. However, there is a lack of abundance on silica, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. It's because these are alkali minerals that are rich during the chemical weathering process in lateritic soils. Now, there are processes influencing mobility and concentration of elements. Now, with secondary enrichment with residual concentration deposits, it's important that the minerals are very mobile. That's why we have like climatic requirements and precipitation requirements. So that's why we have bleaching, hydrolysis that releases the clay minerals, redox reactions that form iron oxides, acidification which further releases and encourages enrichment, and the microbial activity that releases organic acids. Now, there are several mineral deposits that are associated with laterites. First of all, there are bauxite. Bauxite is kind of disgusting looking, but this is a very important ore. This is Let us be very clear that bauxite is not a mineral. However, it is commercially a mineral, but on the sense that it's a mineral, it is not a mineral because it is just a hard lead and partly crystallized hydrogel that consists of variable proportions of the mineral gibbsite. So gibbsite is the mineral on bauxite. And we also have hydroxide and boehmite in the dimorphous form. We can also see traces of hematite, hence the reddish color, and anatase, which is titanium oxide. In a shape and form, we have different types of bauxite. We have pocket deposits, irregular blankets, and detrital deposits, with pocket deposits being pocketed, such as the one with the disease-looking kind of ore. Irregular blankets, they are several meters of tens of meters thick on top of their parent rock, and detrital deposits, meaning they're sedimentary deposits which accumulate in high slope land and inclined bed. And we can also see a mixture of this kind of shapes and form. In composition, it is 35 to 65% alumina, 2 to 10% silica, 2 to 20% iron oxides, and 1 to 3% titanium oxides, with 10 to 30% of it being combined water. There are different type of deposits when it comes to bauxite. We have high-level upland, which is derived from volcanic plutonic rocks, and this is dominated by the mineral gibbsite. With low-level or peneplain bauxites, these are transported and separated in and found on tropical coastline. And karst bauxites, which is prevalent on China, these are oldest bauxites, and these are dominated by boehmite. Now, distribution environment, these are of course found on tropical and subtropical climates. And as mentioned earlier, if a temperate region has been a tropical and subtropical region in the past, the occurrence of bauxite laterite can be seen. Next is the nickel laterite. The picture here is a ore of garnierite. So nickel laterite is developed from mafic and ultramafic rocks through process of chemical weathering, supergene enrichment under tropical climatic conditions. Now, the superficial, deeply weathered residues formed on ultramafic rocks are exposed surface in tropical climates. So, rocks containing nickel, these are mechanically broken down, chemically broken down. They go to decomposition, migration of silica are being lost, and through process of laterization, you can see that ore accumulates. And nickel-rich laterite or garnierite is usually seen on the saprolitic layer. So on origin, we mentioned that it is an ultramafic rock. So peridotite such as dunite, harzburgite, and rocks containing nickel are broken down by intense weathering to form a soil layer. So we have the compositions of nickel laterites, or sometimes gentite, pirnelite, nucleite, conerite, garnierite, and numetite.
And garnerite is specifically derived on serpentinized peridotite. We also have limonite as a type of deposits of nickel laterite, wherein it is enriched in the ferruginous zone. The clay silicate deposits wherein nickel exists as a clay silicate, and saprolite types, which is nickel, is a hydrosilicate saprolite. So the distribution, we can find nickel laterites on Cuba, New Caledonia, Celebes, Borneo, Australia, Papua, New Guinea, Indonesia, Brazil, Venezuela, and of course the Philippines. So as mentioned, this is Garnier, right? This is coined by Jules Garnier, in a French mining engineer in 1864 when he first discovered this. Now we can see the movement of nickel laterite from limonite zone, saprolite zone, and ultramafic rock, wherein nickel accumulates in the saprolitic zone because it is still mobile in the limonite zone. Limonite zone has more iron oxides, as iron and alumina tend to accumulate there, and saprolitic zones, there's where we can find nickel mineralization. Nickel cobalt laterite, so cobalt is also associated with lateritic soils. These are supergene enrichments that form through chemical and mechanical weathering of ultramafic parent rocks. So they form in active continental margins and stable cratonic settings. It takes as little as 1 million years for a laterite profile to develop. So next is iron laterite. Iron is very prevalent on laterite. It's a source of iron oxides such as hematite and goethite. As we can see on the diagram, we have iron-rich residual laterite. And even if it's a bit difficult to extract iron ore from this, uh, we can extract it from lateritic nodules, but in far more fine-grained laterite soil, it's a bit of a difficulty. But I think there are several technologies being developed to extract iron laterite. Now, we move on from laterite, let's go to enriched iron deposits. So enriched iron deposits are those derived from banded iron formations. These are very pretty formations. They are formed through secondary enrichment processes that increase the iron content. So during uh, secondary enrichment processes, these are furthermore being enriched. And we can see that it is being alternated by iron-rich layers, which is iron oxides, iron carbonates, and iron silicates, and as well as silicates. So this BIF or banded iron formations are a crucial ore of iron. We can also, for residual concentration deposits, we have manganese concentration deposits. And we can see manganese on limestone or dolomites that are low in alumina, that they contain disseminated syngenetic manganese carbonate and oxides. We also have limonites containing disseminated introduced manganese, manganiferous silicate rocks such as crystalline schist or altered igneous rocks, and low deposits of manganese minerals or ores high in manganese. As well as with other residual concentration deposits, we can see secondary enrichment because of the chemical and mechanical weathering. Clay and kaolin deposits. Now, the way that clay and kaolin deposits, we can blame hydrolysis for this, with feldspar being transformed in clay with the action of water, furthermore releasing clay minerals. And we have classification clay deposits. We have the kaolin and the red burning residuals. The red burning residuals we don't use much. It's not very much economical. It is what is kaolin is very much sought after because of like the production of China ware. We have veins derived from weathering of dikes, blanket deposits, replacement deposits, and as well as bedded deposits derived from feldspatic sandstone. Bedded deposits of of kaolin, I think, can be evident on Taisan, such as there's has been evidences of clay deposits on beddings. Anyways, these are sourced from crystalline rocks, silicic granular rocks, which are rich in feldspars. And feldspar-rich pegmatite yield dike masses of high-grade white kaolin. Cyanites as well, they yield excellent grade. And other rocks such as limestone shale can also yield kaolinites, but it is preferably they undergo certain processes before they can yield kaolin. Tin. So tin is concentrated more as a placer deposit, which we will discuss earlier, in which chemical and mechanical weathering act on the existing rock to further release stable minerals, which is tin and its form cassiterite. Gold residual concentration deposits. So residual deposits, they are also secondary enriched through residual concentration deposit. They are being removed or secondary enrichment, and they are being accumulated and deposited. Laterites can also contribute to the amount of gold or like the occurrence of gold. In lateritic weathering can lead to the secondary enrichment of gold into nuggets. Now, kyanite has some industrial purposes, but it's a metamorphic mineral. Now, kyanite we can attribute to the placer deposit. So, we've been talking about these placer deposits. What are placer deposits? Placer deposits are when mineral grains or different density are moved by flowing water. And mineral deposits form as a result of gravity separation. So, through action of mechanical and chemical weathering, we have concentration. We concentrate these minerals such as gemstones, um, and as well as we have different type of deposits. We have alluvial placers, which placer, which we can on the hills, alluvial placer, which is found on riverbeds, which are being transported by rivers, and aeolian placer, which is being transported by wind action. They are concentrated by the wind action. And on Australia, you can see that some aeolian placer. Okay, so we also have rare elements or residual concentration deposits. So REEs such as our yttrium, lanthanum, gadolinium, scandium, a lot of those rare elements. They are deep weathering of igneous rocks, pegmatites, and IOCG deposits. Now, this weathering of carbonatite and percaline intrusives concentrate these residual deposits of REE minerals. So as you can see in the diagram, the parent rock is being subjected into chemical and mechanical weathering. Now, this releases the REEs on rocks and they are being leached downwards, wherein they accumulate through ion adsorption. So, what are ion adsorption type deposits? So, ion adsorption type deposits are typically formed in subtropical weathering. So, this sort of relates to lateritic profiles. In weather deposits, the REE are mainly adsorbed into the surface of clay, such as kaolinite. So there are evidences that in the pallid zone, we can see the accumulation of REEs. Relating to this, we have the residual carbonatite associated deposits. So residual deposits associated with carbonatites are secondary deposits formed by weathering and erosion of primary carbonatite rocks. So you have your carbonatite rocks, as you can see on the diagram. Now, as you subject it in chemical and mechanical weathering, these are being released. These REEs are being released in the and now they are undergo through leaching process and they are being reconcentrated to form economicable concentration of rare earth elements. They are also important ores of vermiculite, apatite, and fluorite. So when it comes to the worldwide distribution of residual concentration deposits, I will give now the discussion to Mr. Shara.
Here comes the Manalo. So now let's go to the worldwide distribution of residual concentration deposit of RECDs. So from Pandi et al. 2023, it's a journal entitled Recent Progress in Hydrometallurgical Processing of Nickel Lateritic Oil. There are these or less than 15 countries that are producing and also has a lot of research when it comes to nickel or lateritic nickel ores. Next. And also, based on the statistics of Rajakan Mohan 2024, in a cumulative 100%, Indonesia has 48.6% percent reserves when it comes to nickel laterite. Next by the Philippines, and third is the Russia. How about in bauxite? We discussed earlier that bauxite is not actually mineral but commercial mineral based on the research of Scott 2014 titled Compilation of Gallium Reserves Data for Bauxite Deposit. Basically, it is a USGS survey. These are the countries that has a bauxite deposits. We've discussed it earlier the types of bauxite. So the box light blue is the karstic bauxite, and then the circle with the color of blue is the lateritic bauxite. How about the BIF or the Banded Iron Formations? Which in geologyinternational.com, these are the countries that has a distributions or reserves when it comes to Banded Iron Formations. We can see in the legend their size or the scale based in its gigatons of reserves. And also the color of these shapes means its age or its uh, the date of its deposition. How about the carbonatite or the REE deposits? According to Zhang 2020 in its research carbonate related REE deposit, it is an overview or a review of minerals. There are certain countries here in the world that has basically a separate carbonatite, also REE deposits, and also there are countries that has both of its deposits. And ion absorption types, we discussed it also with relation to REs. According to Chu, um, 2023 in its research, are South China granite special in forming iron absorbent RE deposits. Um, as we discussed earlier, these deposits are basically, when it comes to RC deposits, they are mostly related to ultramafic or mafic rocks. As we can see, the positions of these iron absorption type deposits are mainly near the active volcanism regions. How about the local distribution of RCDs here in the Philippines? So first, laterite, according to Zhao or Zotay Mehe et al. 2024, in its title Laterite Deposits of Southeast Asia, they uh, place Philippines as one of the uh, most have or great reserves of laterites. So as Gab discussed earlier, they've encountered laterites in Mindoro. So you can see here, basically here in the legend, it has a nickel or cobalt deposit. I don't know if Mr. Gabriel Manalo still find the geochemical properties of their research area. Next. And how about in Pangasinan? According to the research of Aquino in 2022, entitled Mineralogical and Geochemical Characteristics of Santa Cruz Nickel Laterite Deposit in Zambales. So as we reminisce, we understand that opulite complex source system also has a ultramafic or mafic rocks. So Mr. Manalo discussed earlier that laterites are associated with this kind of rocks. Next, how about bauxites? According to Naverte, there are some bauxite in Samar, but this research is actually not a uh, mainly uh, a research to identify the bauxites in Samar. It's actually they only characterize or know the genesis of the two weathered soils in Samar, and they encountered that there are bauxites there. So it is a great research. Next is the RE potential in the Philippines. There are researchers that states that there are REs in the Philippines, especially this one by Gibada 2022 entitled The Rare Earth Elements RE Potential in the Philippines. It is a journal in geographical exploration. Next. This it is actually more specific research when it comes to laterite deposit. It is entitled. It is from Tupas et al. 2020, entitled "Nickel Cobalt Mineralization in Text Laterite Deposit in Mindoro, Philippines." Three applied belts are found in Mindoro, Sugar Zones, which is the Cretaceous Manyan Complex, Eocene Vertigalary Complex, and Mid Oligocene Complex. Basically, as I've discussed earlier, it's undergo super gene enrichment. And the main difference between the Intex deposits and other tropical laterite deposits is the composition of the gardenites. In the study, gardenites consist mainly of serpentinite-like minerals, whereas talc-like and septite-like pieces are often found in other laterite deposits. And how about the research of Gabo Ratio et al. 2024, titled Rare Earth Elements Enrichment and Extraction Potential of Bauxite Deposit in Samar? The research investigates our enrichment and extraction potential of bauxite deposit in Paranas, Samar, Philippines. Basically, it is associated with the figure earlier. The main ore minerals of aluminum are gibbsite, boehmite, with minor goethite, hematite, and magnetite. Investigation of geochemical composition of bauxite reveals a total REE content up to 300 ppm, which is one of the highest REE and critical metal content among geological deposits here in the Philippines. Next, we have the mineralogical and geochemical characterization of Santa Cruz nickel deposit. Again, it's associated with the figure earlier. That profile investigated is composed of two main horizons, the limonite and saprolite zones, separated by thin translational zones. Upward through the limonite zones, as goethite ages, its crystallinity increases, which is possibly result of removal of the nickel from its crystal structure and eventually remobilization to lower laterite zones. Next is the comparative study of determination of selective rare earth elements in ion surface clay using handheld leaves and ICP-MS by Gibata et al. 2020. The concentration of selected REs, such as this element in 11 ion absorption clays from El Nido, Palawan, Philippines, were determined using handheld leaves analyzers. The two-sided test showed no significant difference for the average of these minerals resulted from LIB and ICP-MS, whereas these um, chemicals have significant difference. Based on this result, can be concluded that LIBS can be alternative to ICP-MS for rapid determination of some REs. So basically, this is a research a process on how to know RE here. How about the mining techniques for the laterites? We can use open pit mining, strip mining, dredging, heap leaching, and in situ leaching. Next. So this is example of the mining techniques in laterites. You have open pit mining, dredging, strip mining, and heap leaching. How about in REEs, rare earth elements for mine both hard rock sources and weathered rock, with primary methods involving open pit mining, as the earlier technique for laterite. They use ion absorption clays followed by complex chemical process and extraction. For mining methods, we have hard sources and weathered sources, which is for hard as well open pit mining. For weathered sources, we have ion absorption clays and situ leaching. And also there are other sources, for example, the placer recovery or the placer deposits encountered or discussed by Sir Manay earlier, the product recovery and leaching and separation. method. Next is the concentration and pricing method. Concentration is mine ore is crushed in ground to release the bearing minerals, and the flotation, a method called froth flotation used to separate the bearing minerals from other minerals in ore. This is a research basically um entitled Recovery of Nickel Cobalt Iron and REE from low-grade Philippine laterite ores using atmospheric leaching with reduction treatment. So there are different other different techniques to extract these elements. Basically, this high pressure acid leaching (HPAL), but it is actually a hazardous and somehow not an energy efficient process. And then this research proposed a technique which is the atmospheric leaching. And in this study, a reduction process performed prior to acidic extraction of low-grade nickel laterite was gathered from various nickel mining areas in the Philippines. This iron from leaching tailings were recovered through the economic importance for um, this type of deposits. For example, the aluminum production. Laterite bauxite deposits are primary source aluminum ores. Nickel production, laterite deposit also has this nickel-ferrous ores. And also in cobalt production, phosphate production, and iron ore productions. Next. And how about an environmental impact? This basically it is a general overview or the a general of environmental impact for all of these deposits or extraction. First is the erosion and sedimentation. Since we are going to remove certain vegetations or extract different soils from it, we can experience erosion basically. Then water contamination. Since this soil as a chemical or, for example, iron rich or aluminum rich, nickel rich soil, when it coated water, it will degrade. And also, uh, the worst scenario is if this contaminated water will go also into the other local water sources. Biodiversity impact, clearing large areas for mining can result in habitat destructions. Deforestation, open pit mining often requires clearing of large forest areas. Airborne dust, since we're going for erosion, the mining and transportation of theoretic ore can generate airborne dust containing minerals and metals. Rehabilitation challenges, since we're going basically to destroy the environment, we must need to comply in this environmental rehabilitations. And last is social impacts. Mining activities can lead to social disruptions such as displacement of local communities and changes in traditional livelihood. For the ocean, we have Mr. Manal.
So, residual concentration deposits. What are they? They are mineral deposits that accumulates, and the these are formed through secondary enrichment. They're very significantly important in our economy, with nickel being one of our top mining industries, as well as we also have industries for gold. And now we are ready, we are trying to prepare to tap on REE resources. With this advancing desire to extract resources, we should consider the environment, and environmental considerations are are also should be upfront. Now, utilization of advanced technologies for mining and sustainable mining practices shall always be the forefront of exploitation for this resource. Now, residual concentration deposit tells us about how tough situation can reach us to be a better version of ourselves. So that is our presentation for residual concentration deposits for the mineral exploration geostatistics. Thank you very much for the resources.